witches at black masses, evil minds that plot destruction.
We go back to war, and this is one of the more propagandistic wars that we have seen, well, since Bush was in office. So we'll be talking about some of the things that we know, some of the bad takes that have gone out about this, what this means for the country, and what this means for us going forward. So we're going to be spending a lot of time on this, but after we're done with that, the show that I was planning on doing up until Saturday continues with this. Slovakia elects a populist who immediately cuts all foreign aid to the Ukraine, much to the chagrin of our American left. We'll talk about what that means, where we go from there, and what happens to Ukraine because of this. Donald Trump apparently shared nuclear secrets with an Australian businessman. Even though I don't buy it, we'll go over what this story means and what people are trying to say about it and where it goes. And a nutjob goes into the Wisconsin Capitol with a handgun, gets arrested, gets turned around on bail, and then goes back with a rifle. But where do his political leanings lie? You will be surprised. It is going to be all of this and more over here on Contemporary. So strap yourselves in, find some friends, get some snacks, and spend the next 2 hours with me talking about the state of the world. And out of Zion shall come forth the law, and the word of the Lord from Jerusalem. Nation shall not raise sword against nation, and they shall not learn war anymore. For the mouth of the Lord has spoken. I am Jay Edgar, and this is Contemporary. If we do have a few bugs getting started off here, just bear with me a bit. We're back to the old encoder here, which means that we are going back into... we're back into the land where we're going to be in and talking and doing things with this. Looks like I might be dropping a few frames here, so I hope that's not going to be the case. But, of course, with the live stream, once we're done, I am recording this and will be coming out and changing everything over instead of coming directly through what's going on to the live stream, and that's going to the audio platform and everything. Will be taken to the recording. But good evening, everybody. Welcome to Contemporary. My name is Jay Edgar, and we have a lot of stuff to go over here today for the week, because we are only a weekly show at this point now. And, well, I had a full show ready for you guys up until about Saturday morning at 7 o'clock when I realized that, there's a war breaking out in the Middle East again. They're actually going to do something about it this time, and hey, we're probably going to wind up in this one, unfortunately, here. And I've thought about presenting this in a few different ways. I listened to Shapiro this morning for reasons, well, kind of unknown at this point, because I knew it was going to be a horrible take that was just begging the country to go back in and basically do his dirty work for him, or his religion's dirty work for him. And I wanted to do the solemn, I am an American, and I see what is happening in the world, and I know that there are people that want to do some things, but I know that we need to clean up our own house first. And just do that solemn thing like Ben did yesterday. But I'm going to tell you right off the bat, that's not me. It would be fun to make fun of Ben for a good 25 minutes doing that, but that's not me. That's not the atmosphere that you've ever expected out of this show. That's not anything off of this. So, no, we're going to do this the right way. We're going to do this the regular way, and we're going to talk about what's happening there as objectively as I can. I will come into the midst of this saying I am anti-war. I have always been anti-war. I will always be anti-war. There is no sentiment of what we're going to hear from this today that will say that people who are conscripted, sometimes just so they can get free college, should be ordered to go over at the behest of people who would never join the military for the sake of their lives, to go fight somebody else's war for them. Now, I believe that's what's going to happen, but I will, and when I talk about this more as we get into this, I will firmly get into the edit. But I want the people who are watching this to know where I'm coming from originally. I do not take a side with Israel. I do not take a side with Hamas. If I were to take a side, I would hope Israel wins, but I'm not going to put our people in there conscripted to do so. Now, if you want to go over there, I'm sure that Netanyahu would love to hand you a rifle and send you out there, or alternatively, Hamas would love to shield and hide his munitions behind you as your faithful patriot, whichever way you go. But I don't think it should be forced by conscription. I do think that it should be something that should be done on a volunteer basis. I said the same thing about Ukraine, and I said that a lot of people who wanted to go to Ukraine should have had the opportunity to do that as well. But we're going to get into it here. We're going to start right with the war. Let's check in with the chat here. By the way, do feel free to chat in the live chat on either platform. If you like what you see, if you don't like what you see, if you've got something that you want to say about what it is that you see, I do check in with live chat between articles and see what it is that you guys have to say, so feel free to do that as well. I'll be checking in with that right now. YouTube, Twitch, and D-Live chat will appear on the screen. Rumbles will not, unfortunately, so let's get into that. DM Ryan is over here on the YouTube side saying, "Hi, Jay and friends." Hi, DM Ryan. And with that, we're going to get into this here. Let's get started with Fox News. All right, starting today with Fox News. At least 1,100 dead. Israeli PM Netanyahu declares war after Hamas terrorists launch massive attack. This is a live update, but this is frozen in place as of last night, so we'll be talking a bit about the latest updates to that. An hour ago, as of last night, Gaza-Israel conflict death toll numbers shoot up to about 1,100 with thousands injured. Fast facts, Hamas militants have infiltrated Israel in an unprecedented attack, firing more than 3,500 rockets at residential areas from the Gaza Strip. At least 1,100 people were killed in the terrorist attack, and hundreds more were wounded, according to Israel's National Resources Center. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said in a video that Israel is at war and called for a massive military response. Of course, he wants it to be our military, but well, that'll come into my anti-war rant later on from this. And the attack was carried out on the holiday of Simchat Torah. That's going to be important as well. I'm going to read some of this update here. Officials say that at least 1,100 people have died in the Israel-Hamas war that began Saturday morning, with thousands more injured. At least 700 people in Israel were killed, and officials say that at least 260 people were killed at a music festival in southern Israel. Festival goers were reportedly shot by terrorists who arrived in vans. More than 400 people were killed in Gaza, with the Israeli military hitting more than 800 targets in the Gaza Strip. The Gaza Health Ministry estimates that 413 people were killed, including 78 children and 48 women. U.S. Secretary of State Anthony Blinken reported that around 1,000 Hamas soldiers have been involved in the fighting since Saturday. And Israeli officials say that 400 militants have been killed. Around 2,000 people have been injured during the war, which was formally declared by the Israeli government on Sunday. The number of Israeli civilians and soldiers that were taken hostage is still unknown. Officials believe the captives include elderly people, women, and children. Now we get into some of the propaganda, and some of this, again, is going to be disproven, and some of this is wartime propaganda, which means that they're coming out here and saying this stuff to try to goad this into a bigger conflict, to try to goad allies like Libya and Syria and Russia, and even possibly China to come in on the Hamas side because they're fighting against the great evil of the United States, which is most likely going to be backing Israel. And of course, when we see people like Ben Shapiro who come on, and I didn't watch the show, thankfully. I didn't watch his live feed, I didn't watch his YouTube feed or anything else like that. I listened to it back on the audio platform. But where he's sitting out here and saying, look at these pictures, folks. Look, this is terrorism, okay? They're taking these women. This woman is bleeding from the genital area. Oh, okay, gang. This is why we need to go in there and have the biggest military attack ever. Because, I mean, on top of the fact that Ben Shapiro, he is so Jewish that when he walks into a room, the Hava Nagila plays. Nobody knows where it's coming from, but it just starts playing. It is 3/4 of his personality. Is his religion. I have a friend who's like that with a Catholic religion too, but I mean, Ben makes Vong look secular by comparison. But I digress on that avenue here. But he's out here with just waving pictures around of, okay, gang, we've got to go in here, we got to do military, we got to do this. And there's a lot of sentiment with that, especially among the American right and the Christian right too. I'll go into that a little bit more in a bit. Senior members of Hamas and Hezbollah have told the Wall Street Journal that Iranian security officials have had a hand in planning attacks against Israel, the outlet reported. Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps has repeatedly been working with Hamas to plan the attack since August. Hamas and Hezbollah are both considered terrorist organizations to the U.S. government. Anthony Blinken told CNN that there is no evidence yet that Iran was involved in the attacks, which began early Saturday morning. Yes, that's actually the case. There's no evidence of it at this point, but again, the propaganda machine is going to try to come out here to try to goad the U.S. into this war, one way or the other. Dual Helix, intelligently, over on the Rumble side, because I'm pretty sure that he's got some things to say about this that are not going to be YouTube friendly. Let's see, we've not seen evidence that Iran directed or was behind this particular attack, but there's certainly a long relationship, Blinken said. Another U.S. official told the Wall Street Journal that they don't have any information at this time to corroborate this account. This is a little bit of CYA, by the way, and it kind of shows onto the uniparty mentality that Fox News has gone to, because if indeed, we'll stop for a second and we'll take Hamas and Hezbollah's word as gospel for just a moment. For a what if, and I'm not saying that this is definitely what happened. If the U.S. intelligence doesn't have the evidence to come back out and say this is what the case, a guy streaming to YouTube and Rumble from his living room definitely doesn't have the evidence to come back out and support this. But I still, for instance, I want to say this, and this is one of the accusations that's been going around here. If this is true, and Iran helped to plan this and tried to push this forward, while they may not have specifically and directly used the $6 billion in unfrozen assets that Joe Biden just gave to Iran, but it does mean that they can turn around and free up $6 billion in assets for other projects that they were going to do. And then funnel those $6 billion in assets into that. It's like Planned Parenthood with government taxpayer money. They're not, of course, using directly the taxpayer money to fund abortions, but they're using it to fund other things so they can free up money to go back and fund abortion. If this is true, and again, I don't have the evidence to say right now that Iran totally was the one who went out and planned this and pushed this forward. Is it believable? Yes. It is 100% possible. But I'm going to need to see a lot more evidence before I condemn one nation or one terrorist cell over allegations. You guys know how I've been from the beginning. I am always fair, and I need to see the evidence before I condemn anybody. We'll read one more update here from Fox News. Israel-Hamas war. Central Command moves carrier strike group to Eastern Mediterranean Sea amid conflict. And we're going to carry this a little bit further on in a later article. But let's touch on this because it'll be talking about where we are for this one here. Central Command is sending a carrier strike group to the Eastern Mediterranean Sea amid the Israel-Hamas war that began on Saturday. The move comes as at least 1,100 people have died during the conflict, including at least 4 Americans. The U.S. has begun to move the USS Gerald R. Ford carrier strike group. Is it the Gerald Ford because it takes over when another carrier can't make the cut or gets eliminated, but then can't come back out and get restarted after its service is finished? Is that why it's called the Gerald Ford? The statement, which was released Sunday, read, that includes the U.S. Navy aircraft carrier USS Gerald R. Ford, the Ticonderoga class guided missile cruiser USS Normandy, the Arleigh Burke class guided missile destroyers USS Thomas Hudner, USS Ramage and USS Carney, and USS Roosevelt. The Gerald R. Ford is the largest warship in the world. It was commissioned in 2017. That actually makes a lot of sense. Let's see. Helix says, I saw them drop alleged white phosphorus in Gaza earlier while Karine Jean was making her briefing today. I did not see that. Yes, the UK sailed an aircraft carrier too. Yes, the UK is absolutely getting involved in this one. We'll see what happens with that. We've also taken steps to augment U.S. Air Force F-15, F-16, and A-10 aircraft squadrons in the region, the press release added. The U.S. maintains ready forces globally to further reinforce this posture if required. Central Command stands firmly without Israel, and that's a typo. That's supposed to say with our, I guarantee it. U.S. Central Command stands firmly with our Israeli and regional partners to address the risks of any party seeking to expand the conflict, U.S. Central Command Commander General Michael Kurilla said in a statement. So, if I can stop being tongue-tied for 10 freaking seconds, and we can get through this, yes, we are already getting ready to go back in and be a part of this. And there was no doubt from this when I heard this on Saturday morning. Now, before we get into more of this, I want to have a little bit of a rant on how we got here. Because there are definitely some things doing this. Now, this is going to be a massive and major situation that is going to involve the U.S. for years to come. For however long this goes, the U.S. is going to be involved. Then there are reasons for that, number one. As I said in the announcement on Twitter, one of the big things that comes out of this, and with there being an actual war that the U.S. is going to be involved in, but even in a war, by the way, that the U.S. would maybe not be involved in, as if they're ever going to set this one aside, is the fact that while the leptoids will tell you the economy is fantastic, it is not. What the people who are controlling Biden, I think, are hoping for at this point, especially if there is a prolonged Middle Eastern conflict, is that we're going to see the same thing that we saw with the Afghanistan debacle and the Operation Iraqi Freedom and the various contingencies and campaigns that we launched around Saudi Arabia from 2001 on until like last year. And what I mean by that when I say that, I did an analysis before I started doing public YouTube analyses on why the economy crashed, because, well, I was affected by the fact that the economy crashed. It affected me directly because it was near impossible for me to get a job fresh out of school at that time because people with way more experience than me, that wasn't necessarily their first choice for a job, but with way more experience than me were vying to get that same job and hoping that and praying that they could get that and keep the roof over their heads for as long as they could. But every time I looked at the data and where the economy was going and what was happening with that, every time I look at it, the economy seemed like it was supposed to crash between 2002 and 2004. Not 2008 when it finally gave out. And one of the things that I noted when we were getting into, when I was starting to realize what made it crash in 08 rather than 04, was that in the midst of the Afghanistan and the Iraq and the Saudi Arabian campaigns that we were running at the time, that was getting a lot more people into military positions and going into military contracts, pulling them away from civilian jobs, especially because we were actively in the region at the time, opening up a slew of jobs for other people that otherwise would not have been there, causing the economy to tank even earlier than it did. But it was also injecting a lot of combat pay into the economy. People who would normally, while they were military and government employees and contractors, not be the highest paid people out there, but they were adding a combat pay bonus onto their checks that they were sending home to their families, that their families were using for their bills and everything else, on top of the mommy has a job on top of what daddy's doing, or daddy has a job on top of what mommy's doing with the military, on top of all that, and it was able to hold everything back up. While we are not doing well economically in this country, if we do go into a full-scale conflict, and there is a lot of enthusiasm to do so with that right now, lightning could strike twice, theoretically and statistically, and we have the same situation where, again, we pull a lot of people who are patriotically ready to go back in and defend and do whatever it takes for our greatest ally. It's one of those things. Leaving their jobs behind, leaving their jobs open for somebody else who could come in and grab that, and also sending combat pay home, making more federal employees at the same time. So when they say, who was it that said that, by the way? Who did that song in the 70s? It was the 60s or the 70s. I don't even remember. I know the song because, well, it's quoted at the bottom of the screen. I just don't know who was the one that did it. But like they said back in the 70s, war, what is it good for? Well, they say absolutely nothing, but really realistically, it takes the focus of the news off of what's happening in the administration, and it injects extra money into the economy that otherwise normally wouldn't have been there. So, now with that being said as well, the region that we're doing this in, especially that little sliver right alongside the Mediterranean Sea. If you've ever studied history, or read the Bible for that matter, when in human history has that slice of land ever not been contested? Ever. For most biblical scholars, that goes back to when Abraham was walking around, was where that slice of land started being contested because, well, Abraham was one of the first people to contest it. I contend that, of course, this was contested long, long before then, and our Greek forebears and our Hellenistic forebears especially were contesting that long before that. But most notably, one of the first military campaigns that a lot of people could recognize from a history book was Abraham coming over from what is now Iraq, because it was the Promised Land, launching 3 of the world's major religions out of the area. And it's pretty much been in a state of chaos since then. I don't know what it is that they think that is going to change off this. Now, of course, Israel, whether this is true or not, and I do tend towards the fact that it's true because I have read into Islamic faith and Islamic religion. I do tend towards the fact that this is true, that there is the age-old religious conflict between the descendants of Isaac and the descendants of Ishmael, in which both of them have been out to destroy each other to claim their forefather's birthright, Abraham's birthright, the one that went to Isaac. There is that avenue to things with that. And the Christians will look into this and look at the players that are going on right now, including, by the way, Israel, Jerusalem, Persia, Iran, Gog and Magog, Russia, and further Eastern Europe, and thinking, hey, it's time for Armageddon. This is Megiddo. While I don't think this is going to be the battle that brings us into Armageddon, I am preparing a little bit more for that as well. Just because of the conflict that's been going on in Eastern Europe at the same time. So there's that to think about. But let's move on. Let's talk a bit more about the news and what's happening there. Let me get the live chat back up so I can see what you guys are saying. So we read from Reuters how Hamas duped Israel as it planned devastating attack. From Samaya Nakul and Jonathan Saul. A careful campaign of deception ensured that Israel was caught off guard when the Palestinian Islamist group Hamas launched its devastating attack, enabling a force using bulldozers, hang gliders, and motorbikes to take on the Middle East's most powerful army. Saturday's assault, the worst breach in Israel's defenses since Arab armies waged war in '73, followed 2 years of subterfuge by Hamas that involved keeping its military plans under wraps and convincing Israel it did not want to fight. You know, in spite of all the fights that have happened in Israel since 1973. While Israel was led to believe that it was containing a war-weary Hamas by providing economic incentives to Gazan workers, the group's fighters were being trained and drilled, often in plain sight, a source close to Hamas said. This source provided many of the details for the account of the attack and its buildup that has been pieced together by Reuters, three sources within Israel security establishment who, like others, asked not to be identified, also contributed to this account. Hamas gave Israel the impression that it was not ready for a fight, the source close to Hamas, describing plans for the most startling assault since Yom Kippur War 50 years ago, when Egypt and Syria surprised Israel and made it fight for its own survival. That was, by the way, again, 73, 50 years ago. Hamas used an unprecedented intelligence tactic to mislead Israel for the last few months by giving it a public impression that it was not willing to go into a fight or confrontation with Israel while preparing for this massive operation, the source said. Again, I have a really hard time believing that because we've seen plenty of military operations in that region. I believe this is the second one in the Biden admin. And we had one, I know, during the Trump admin too. You're going to have a harder time than this convincing me that that Hamas is just saying, we don't want to go to war. Israel concedes it was caught off guard by an attack timed to coincide with the Jewish Sabbath and its religious holiday, which, for the Orthodox community, especially, and this again came from me listening to Benny Boy this morning, they're not allowed to have or operate electronic devices during the holiday that they were on. So they had, obviously, Shabbat, Sabbath, Saturday, sundown Friday to sundown Saturday, where they're not allowed to read the news, look at electronic devices, or anything else like that. And then they had an extended Shabbat for Sunday. Another way to be taken off guard at this point. Hamas fighters stormed into Israeli towns, killing 700 Israelis and abducting dozens. Israel has killed more than 400 Palestinians in its retaliation on Gaza since then. This is our 9/11. No. No, it's not. And there are people who've been trying to do the math about that. No, this is not your 9/11. Said Major Nir Dinar, a spokesperson for the Israeli Defense Forces. They got us. They surprised us, and they came fast from many spots, both from the air and the ground and the sea. Osama Hamdan, the Hamas representative in Lebanon, told Reuters that the attacks showed Palestinians had the will to achieve their goals regardless of Israel's military power and capabilities. One of the most striking elements of their preparations, Hamas constructed a mock Israeli settlement in Gaza, where they practiced a military landing and trained to storm it, the source close to Hamas said, adding that they even made videos of the maneuvers. Israel surely saw them, but they were convinced that Hamas wasn't keen on getting into a confrontation, the source said. Might have to bump my microphone up here. Meanwhile, Hamas sought to convince Israel it cared more about ensuring that workers in Gaza, a narrow strip of land with more than 2 million residents, had access to jobs across the border and had no interest in starting a new war. So now it's time we get out our map. In fact, let me do a Gaza Strip map instead, because I think that's going to make this a little bit easier to see what we have going on here. To the map. And we'll have a look at this here. So, yeah, you have 2 million residents in just this little itty bitty spot right here. Now, just for comparison, that's probably give or take about the size of Connecticut and Rhode Island. Maybe a little, no, it's less than that. It's probably about the size of Rhode Island, and 2 million people in that area. Give me just a second here. I gotta bump this up just a touch. 1, 2. Yeah, that's better. Leave that up for now. And of course, we've got the West Bank that was also Palestinian territory. So we've got people coming from here, from out here. To draw an equivalence to this with 9/11, I can't do that one, and I can't see that one either. So that is what we have for that. Hamas was able to build a whole image that was not ready for a military adventure against Israel, the source said. Since a 2021 war with Hamas, Israel has sought to... And see, that's the problem with it, is we just did this in 21. Israel has sought to provide a basic level of economic stability in Gaza by offering incentives, including thousands of permits to Gazans, so they can work in Israel or the West Bank, where salaries in construction, agriculture, and service jobs could be 10 times the level of pay in Gaza. We believe that the fact that they were coming to work and bring money into Gaza would create a certain level of calm. We were wrong, another Israeli spokesperson said. So, that is apparently how they got duped. I don't completely buy it, but it's the narrative that we're taking from this right now. Let's keep going. CNN telling us everything that we need to know about this. This should be educational. Israel is at war with Hamas. Here's what to know from Abbas al-Lawati and Nadine Ibrahim. Israel has declared war in the Palestinian militant group Hamas after it carried out an unprecedented attack by air, sea, and land on Saturday. The large-scale surprise assault has left at least 900 dead in Israel, prompting a lethal volley of retaliatory Israeli airstrikes in Gaza that killed at least 687 people. As they retreated into Gaza, the militants claim to have taken at least 100 hostages with them and have threatened to kill them if airstrikes target Gaza without warning. Israel has pledged that Hamas will pay a heavy price and may now be preparing a ground incursion into Gaza. Yeah, that's almost pretty much a given at this point. What happened? Militants from Gaza fired thousands of rockets towards Israeli towns on Saturday morning before breaking through the heavily fortified border fence with Israel and sending militants deep into Israeli territory. There, Hamas gunmen killed hundreds of people, including civilians and soldiers, and took hostages, sometimes from their homes. It took Israeli troops more than 2 days to take back control as fighting raged in the streets on Monday. The IDF said it had retaken control of all Israeli communities in Gaza's vicinity and on its southern border after fighting with Hamas ended. The attacks were unprecedented in tactic and scale, as Israel has not faced its adversaries in street battles on its own territory since the 1948 Israeli-Arab War. I think somebody needs to fact check that, because I'm pretty sure that there were street battles in their territory in 21. I know that it was a mostly rocket attack, but pretty sure there were street battles going on there as well. It has also never faced a terror attack of this magnitude that has taken the lives of so many civilians. While Hamas has kidnapped Israelis before, it has never taken dozens of hostages at once, including children and the elderly. And again, to take the propaganda at face value, this shouldn't even be surprising to anybody that they're going to do so. If we take everything that happens with Hamas at face value, and we'll look at some video of this in a bit, that they're not shy about hiding their weapons, their strategic positions, and anything else that they don't want anybody to attack behind civilians. Any other sort of fun toy, they love hiding it behind civilians, because then they can come out and say, "Oh, the evil Israel, they are taking our women and our children. Look at how evil they are." So of course, why wouldn't they also go back and try to hide their military position behind Israeli women and children? It seems average to their MO. Hamas called the operation Al-Aqsa Storm and said that the assault was the response to what it described as Israeli attacks on women, the desecration of the Al-Aqsa Mosque in Jerusalem, and the ongoing siege of Gaza. In response to the attack, Israel has declared war and launched Operation Swords of Iron, striking suspected Hamas and Islamic Jihad targets in Gaza. Hundreds have been killed in Gaza as of Monday, including dozens of children, the Palestinian Ministry of Health in Gaza said. The IDF has urged civilians in Gaza to leave their residential areas immediately for their safety, as Israeli military operations continue to target Hamas and shut all crossings between Israel and Gaza, potentially setting the stage for a ground incursion into the enclave. And a reminder that there's really not a lot of place for them to go if they do run. I mean, anywhere else that they run to, it's going to be, oh, Israel, Israel, Israel. So they either go to the ocean, to the Mediterranean Sea, or to Egypt. Which technically at this point you're in Egypt. Not technically, I mean it's Sinai Peninsula, it is Egypt, but yeah. Ocean, Israel, or Egypt. Take your pick. And there's not a lot of window for you to go into Egypt either. I don't know exactly how Egypt feels about the Palestinian Authority. I don't know if they're allied, I don't know if they're enemies or whatnot. But what I can tell you here is if we look at the map, there do not appear to be a lot of roads that traverse between the two. I think we just got the one over here. No, they curved that around too. So there do not appear to be any roads that run between these two territories. Just, there's one. Government office. So exactly how welcome they would be in Egypt, I can't tell you. Israeli Minister of Defense Yoav Gallant said on Monday that he had ordered a complete siege on Gaza. No electricity, no food, no fuel, everything closed, he said, adding that no water will be delivered either. Tensions between Israelis and Palestinians have existed since before Israel's founding in 1948. Yeah, again, they go back probably about 5,000 years. There are those who say, and historically I think that there is merit to this, I don't know if it's true or not, that the Palestinians, who were the occupants of Israel prior to the UK giving it over to the Jews after World War II, but prior to that, there are talks that the Palestinians are the genetic descendants of the Philistines. Again, I can't say if that's true or not, and there seems to have been some scholarly debate, so it's not just me that says that, hey, I don't know if this is a real thing or not, but there has been talk about that. Thousands of people on both sides have been killed and many more injured over decades. Violence has been particularly acute this year. The number of Palestinians, militants, and civilians killed in the occupied West Bank by Israeli forces since the year began is the highest in nearly 2 decades. The same is true of Israelis and foreigners, most of them civilians killed in Palestinian attacks. Israel captured Gaza from Egypt in the '67 war and withdrew its troops and settlers in '05. The territory became home to some 2 million Palestinians. Fell under Hamas's control in '07 after a brief civil war with Fatah, a rival Palestinian faction that is the backbone of the Palestinian Authority. I remember the debate about going to war in that one too, by the way. After Hamas seized control, Israel and Egypt imposed a strict siege on the territory. That answers my question from earlier. Israel also maintains an air and naval blockade on Gaza. Human Rights Watch has called the territory an open-air prison. More than half of its population lives in poverty and is food insecure. Nearly 80% of its population relies on humanitarian assistance. So, and I understand where it is, and it's terrible that they would do that in retaliation for what it is that Hamas did, but understandably as well, any population is 3 missed meals away from a revolution. The hope is that the people of the Gaza Strip turn on Hamas and oust them from power. Will they do that? History says probably not. But that is the hope when you cut off food, water, and electricity to a region like that, is that the people will turn on the government and say, hey, why the hell aren't you taking care of us? Hamas and Israel have fought several wars before Saturday's operation. The last war between the two was in 21, which lasted for 11 days and killed at least 250 people in Gaza and 13 in Israel. Yeah, see, again, that's why I'm saying, why are we saying that we haven't had a war in this region since 1973? We just had one like 2 years ago. Saturday's assault also occurred 50 years, almost to the day since the 73 war, when Israel's Arab neighbors launched a surprise attack on Israel on Yom Kippur, the holiest day in the Jewish calendar, on October 6th, 73. So that's what CNN wants you to know, and mostly truth. Let's talk about some of what's on the ground right now. From my neck of the woods, from Fox 6 Milwaukee, rather. War in Israel, Wisconsin synagogue shows support those in the Holy Land. From Ashley Sears, Christina Van Zelst, and Fox 6 News digital team. A crowd comes together in a show of support for Israel. They are mourning the loss of hundreds and praying for the safety of those in the country. Thousands of miles away from the conflict, the pain of wars felt closer to home at the congregation Shalom in Fox Point, which is a Milwaukee suburb. There, about 1,000 people gathered on Monday night, October 9th, in solidarity with Israel. This is not a Jewish thing, this is not an Israel thing, this is a human thing, said Mark Shapiro of the Milwaukee Jewish Community Center. The community mourned the loss of those killed and prayed for the safety of those in the country. Both things I'm in favor of, by the way. I was actually a little bit weirded out because the pastor at the church that I go to now, didn't say anything about what happened in Israel this weekend. Not a word, not in the sermon, not in the prayer, not anything. But during the silent prayer, I did say that I hope that all those who are not active military in both Israel and Palestine do get to be as safe as humanly possible. And yes, and I know with the players that are involved in both sides, safe as humanly possible is a relative term. Here I am in the Midwest, and my heart is in the East, and it's painful, said Moshe Katz, who has family in Israel. Katz has spoken to his family in Israel daily since the war erupted there. Everybody knows someone who is either injured or killed, raped, or taken hostage. It's that small a country, and everybody knows everybody, Katz said. Katz shared the same heartache as many in the synagogue, confused and saddened. They have our children. They have our children in cages. This is not option, Katz said. Prayers are not just coming from the Jewish community, but Catholics as well. I want everybody to know that the pilgrims are safe, said Father Roman Streichel of St. Mary's Kenosha. I know that dude. Father Streichel is with 33 others in the area on a pilgrimage in the Holy Land. Right now, they're in Jordan. Streichel shared a message from the Archdiocese on Monday. That guy used to buy groceries where I worked. No, I never went into his church. I just know him because I sliced deli meat for him. We made it out of Israel this morning. It was quite an adventure to get across the border in Jordan. It took a long time, but we all made it and we're all safe, Streichel said. In the room on Monday evening, there's reflection and hope. We're all feeling extremely numb, extremely sad, Katz said. The group not only offered prayers, but raised more than $31,000 for those in Israel. Good. Private charity is always the best. In fact, let's take just a second off of what we're talking about here because they're doing this and saying... So, just doing a brief Google search, and I did do both sides, by the way. I know it's probably going to be unpopular with one side or the other, but again, I'm anti-war, and I know that there are going to be people who are popping in here who are both charitable to Israel and Palestine. I know there are going to be people that pop off in here that want to see both sides wiped off the face of the earth, too. So we've got a few here that they're showing. They're abbreviated. This is an article from Time Magazine that's got this on here. But we've got Kibbutz Nir Oz, Magen David Adom, Israel, Jewish Agency's Fund for Victims of Terror, Alliance for the Middle East Peace, Medical Aid for Palestinians, Palestine Children's Fund Relief, and the UN Relief and Works Agency. This one does seem to be tilted towards Palestine as well. Let me get this link in the chat for Time Magazine. I'll get it in the Rumble chat too. If you guys do want to throw a couple bucks to either side, it looks like in here there's going to be a pretty comprehensive list. Again, tilted more towards the Palestinian side, but there is a comprehensive list. No matter who it is you want to support in this, it's going to be there. I'm probably going to throw a couple bucks towards the Israel side, myself. So that's what you want to do. If you, the next article or the next page was Charities for Palestine, and we've got the Palestinian Children's Alliance Fund, UNRWA, ANERA, Islamic Relief Worldwide, Palestine Solidarity Campaign, and UNICEF, among others, if you do want to help out on that side. let's read one from our friends over at NPR, who will tell you, of course, that everything that's happening here is a result of Republican policy, and only Republicans make war, and only Republicans make people suffer, so make sure that you hit that donate button, so NPR can continue to tell you how only Republicanism is wrong and everything progressive is right. Remember, NPR is never printing reality. National Progressive Radio. They say Israel's Netanyahu says offensive against Hamas is just the beginning, which is the wartime propaganda that we typically see from this. But let's see what David Mystic has to say and hit that donate button, because NPR is never printing reality. National Progressive Radio, let's see what it is that they have to say. Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu said his country's offensive against the militant group in Hamas is only just the beginning, as he vowed to lay total siege to the Gaza Strip in the wake of the unprecedented assault in Israel's territory and citizens. And unfortunately, they have the firepower to do so, by the way. The Palestinian militant group Hamas, which took control of Gaza in 2007, launched a massive surprise attack on Israel's southern border. We know that. The group fired an estimated 3,000 rockets throughout the day towards Israel. "We've only started striking Hamas," Netanyahu said in an address late Monday. "What we will do to our enemies in the coming days will reverberate with them for generations." As Netanyahu spoke, Israel continues its retaliatory missile strikes on the Gaza Strip to bombard Hamas targets. Israeli forces were also amassing troops for possible land invasion after its military had called up reservist soldiers. Death tolls continue to rise on both sides of the conflict. Israeli media report more than 900 Israelis have been killed. Palestinian health officials say at least 680 Palestinians have been killed by Israel airstrikes. Those numbers have gone up since this article was written. So we're going to move on past this at this point. Here is a video of one of the buildings being struck as they go. Censored Man says Israel bombed a high-rise residential building in Gaza. Now this too, by the way, is one of the things that I point out when I say that they do hide their munitions behind civilians, if we take the propaganda at face value. If we take it at face value, then, I mean, I'm looking at this and I can see, hey, number one, I don't see a rocket coming in anywhere. And then I see explosions coming from the bottom after the building starts to crumble. Which means, well, there are certain things that I can't actually say because of YouTube with 9/11, or they're sitting back here hiding behind their civilians again. So there is that aspect of things as well, and I would definitely believe in, yeah, hey, we'll definitely come back out and cry foul if they go after our civilians, but our munitions just happen to be there. From CBS News, her name is Noah. Video shows woman being taken by Hamas at Supernova Music Festival, where at least 260 were killed. From Caitlin O'Kane. I'm going to refresh this one real quick because I want to see if they pull the video up to the top. Or if they're going to block me because I have my ad blocker on. Oh no, they'll show it. Back this out a little bit.
Well, the site of one of the first and deadliest attacks this weekend was at an Israeli music festival where thousands of mostly young people were dancing and celebrating with friends. Before it was over, at least 260 people were dead, while others are missing, believed to have been kidnapped. CBS's Imtiaz Tayeb spoke with one of the survivors.
The party was still going as the sun rose over the Negev desert in southern Israel. Then, chaos, as heavily armed Hamas gunmen, some on paragliders, made the festival one of their first targets, shooting into the crowd and grabbing as many captives as they could, including 25-year-old Noah Argamani. forced onto the back of a Hamas gunman's motorcycle. Her father, Yaakov, is desperate for her to return home, but says Israel must not do so by force. Only by peaceful measures, he says. We need to act with sensitivity. Let's talk. Since Argamani's abduction, unverified video apparently shows her being held inside Gaza. As the brutal aftermath of Hamas's festival attack is laid bare, the remains of at least 260 people have now been recovered, according to a rescue group. 22-year-old Gal Levy barely managed to get out alive.
We heard the bullets like pew, pew, pew. Everybody started running in panic.
Levy was shot in both legs and shows us one of the bullets that was removed by surgeons. He says he's not sure if he'll ever walk again.
But they just left us over there. I was waiting 6 hours.
So you feel let down by the military, by the government?
I feel left down by the army. I was really sure after the guy that came, the terrorist, they take our phone, that's it. I'm gonna die.
Now, Israelis try and come to terms with the horror so many have experienced. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has warned tonight a number of Hamas gunmen are still on the loose here inside Israel. Nora.
Imtiaz Tayeb, thank you.
Now, I will question the intelligence of having a dance party, which that's where this woman that they were talking about being kidnapped from was they were doing a dance party like right on the Gaza Strip border. I mean, it's a free country, do what you want, but I will question the intelligence of the committee planners who decided that was a good place to have a dance party. I'm sorry. Disturbing video out of Israel show innocent civilians, including women and children and the elderly, being taken hostage by Hamas, which is on the U.S. list of terrorist organizations, but so is MAGA, so we see how much crap they have on the shelf as they invaded the country on Saturday. In one video, a woman yells for help, her arms outstretched as she's taken away on a motorcycle. She is Noah Argamani, a university student who was attending the Supernova Music Festival on the south of Israel when the Palestinian militants began their attack. Argamani's father, Yaakov, said that he was in disbelief at the images that he saw. She's an amazing person, a sweet child, he told CBS News foreign correspondent Holly Williams in Hebrew. When asked what measures he wants the Israeli government to do to get his daughter back, Argamani said only by peaceful measures. We need to act with sensitivity, he said. They also have mothers who are crying, the same as it is for us. The video of Noah being captured has been widely circulated on social media. Her name is Noah, many share in the caption, adding the name of the face that is filled with fear. Noah was taken away from her boyfriend. Her family and friends told Reuters, "We all want to believe that it's not, but you can't. You can't deny it. It's just her face, her clothes, and it's her boyfriend. Like, you can see him very clearly. You can see very clearly that it's her," Noah's friend Amit Parparia told the news agency. The conflict between the Jewish state and Hamas has been tumultuous for decades, but on Saturday, Hamas terrorists broke through the barrier at the border between Israel and Gaza, launching an unprecedented attack, Williams reports. So, and we're going to see, I mean, I'm not touching on a lot of the major videos trying to pull sympathy onto Israel. I am trying to be as objective as possible. Yes, I will take a side in this, but in reporting, I want this to be as objective as I can be. Trust me, again, I listened to a report today that was pure propaganda. That was for the pure purpose of trying to embroil the U.S. into a long, drawn-out 20-year war again. And now we have some U.S. response here. Pentagon is pushing U.S. defense industry to bolster Israel in fight against Hamas. From Amanda Macias. The Pentagon said Monday it's coordinating with the U.S. defense titans to expedite the shipping of pending Israeli weapons orders, as violence in the region escalates following the horrific terror attack carried out by Hamas, which, by the way, if you did not buy defense contractor stock and you want to cash in, you still have time. It's actually down right now. I was looking at a few of them because I have Raytheon and Lockheed Martin. And I know that my former co-host Elaine has Northrop Grumman and also Raytheon. Those stocks are going to go up. I'm not going to get into the specifics on this call, but the bottom line is we're working as fast as possible to provide critically needed munitions of various types and other weapons, a senior defense official said. The official who spoke on the condition of anonymity. Per rules established by the Pentagon, added that military cargo planes carrying security assistance have already departed the U.S. en route to the region. Excuse me. Oof. Sorry about that. The Pentagon declined to share specific details of the type of security assistance the U.S. is providing to Israel. Defense names rose broadly in the market on Monday. The iShares, U.S. Aerospace and Defense ETF, jumped 4.5%, with Northrop Grumman surging 11%. We're anticipating continuous delivery of some of the requests Israel has made, the official said, adding the attacks carried out by Hamas on Israeli civilians was ISIS-level savagery. Lloyd Austin on Sunday ordered the movement of U.S. firepower closer to the region in order to project force and bolster Israeli security assistance because, well, our military has already chosen a side in this conflict. The Gerald Ford Strike Group, we talked about that earlier, has moved itself into the Mediterranean. They're augmenting F-35, F-15, F-16, and A-10s. We knew about the F-16, F-15, and A-10 from the previous article. This one adds the F-35. Netanyahu called Hamas's attack on Israel a terrible mistake, and in a televised speech warned that the retaliatory strikes were just the beginning. An interesting side twist before I give my corollary to why I think we're going into this war. Many in the House GOP caution against tying Israel and Ukraine aid together. You know that, I mean, we all knew already that Israel is going to be funded by the U.S. interests in this. I think everybody who woke up on Saturday and saw this realized that this was going to be an increase in spending that was going to be fully bipartisan, but to tie it with the Ukrainian spending makes it and puts it into a partisan court. This is from Lauren Fox, Annie Grayer, and Jeremy Herb. The Biden admin and congressional Democrats are weighing and tying legislation for additional military support for Israel with military assistance for Ukraine. No, that's not going to fly, ever. Setting up a showdown with congressional Republicans opposed to helping Ukraine amid the tumult of the speakerless chamber. The looming fight over tying military aid for Israel and Ukraine together, along with Taiwan and potentially border funding, is the latest in a series of complicated questions a new speaker will have to navigate as the narrow Republican majority grapples with its future. It comes as interim Speaker McHenry maintains his role is limited to help Israel in the midst of the war, meaning the House can't pass any legislation until a new speaker is chosen, which, by the way, McCarthy is going to run for that again. He's already said that he's going to because he believes that the positioning with Israel is going to help his re-election bid. The White House has yet to formalize a request for additional aid to Israel. It is expediting weapons already purchased first, but briefers on a call with lawmakers Sunday night underscored that there would be an eventual need, as Israel burns through munitions. On a Senate briefing on Sunday evening, Armed Services Chairman Jack Reed, a Democrat from Rhode Island, and others proposed packaging Ukraine aid with Israel aid together, with the expectation that conversation will likely intensify over the next several days ahead of the Senate's return next week. One person familiar told CNN, "This is the stupidest idea I've heard come out of Congress." And I have been hearing a lot of stupid things come out of Congress for a very, very, very fucking long time. But this will backfire on Democrats. The idea, of course, is that by doing so, by tying these two things together, it means that it will be an automatic win for... it'll force Republicans to come in and say, no, we must defend Israel. So we'll do whatever it takes. If we have to go give $17 trillion to Ukraine in order to go defend Israel, we will do it. And there is some logic behind doing that for Democrats, but again, my fear is that this comes back and backfires and nobody gets the aid because of it, and we see ourselves into another major government shutdown due to it. One of the logical reasonings behind what Democrats are doing when they call for this is very simple. What goes through the minds of the politicians, the House representatives on the floor, I don't necessarily know, because I don't know how much they're actually in tune with their constituencies or how much they pay lip service, but I know that a lot of the constituency on the ground, or even a lot of MAGA people, are taking a side in this particular conflict. Comes from the fact that, while none of the politicians have ever outright said it, there's an undertone. Whenever we do a crusade, crusade is foreshadowing what I was about to say. Whenever we do a campaign into a Middle Eastern country, Saudi Arabia, Afghanistan, Iraq, Iran, Qatar, the UAE, any of these countries that we have had campaigns in the last 100 years, the sentiment behind especially working class Christian Democrats and more evangelical Republicans is the fact that we're doing a sort of crusade into the Middle East to go back and spread Christianity. It's not true. We're mostly going to screw up and destabilize countries so we can take advantage of their oil. But that's typically the sentiment that goes around working middle class Democrats and Republicans, that this is some sort of spread of Christianity, this is some sort of crusade, and we need to go back and do this, otherwise the Muslims win. And that is going to be the logic that is used behind this idea to tie Ukrainian funding with Israeli funding. Because how could you ever say no to funding a crusade? Do you hate Jesus or something? We're going to hear that at least once in the funding fights, by the way. I promise you. And yes, they're talking about putting Taiwan together with this as well, so that's something to watch for, and that's going to be the next big budget fight here. I got one from the New York Times. I promise we're almost done with this topic. And then we can do the show that I was planning on doing up until 7 o'clock on Saturday morning. But my corollary, of course, as to why I think we're going into this war, that Ron DeSantis wants to take us into now, and Nikki Haley wants to take us into now, and the Donald, oddly enough, does not. At least 11 U.S. citizens were killed in Israel, Biden says, and others may be captives of Hamas. Because, of course, we didn't really need an excuse to go into war into this region, but hey, now we've got one. Hey, these people are under the protectorate of the United States government because they are citizens. Arm up the tanks, boys. We're going to war. From Zach Montag. At least 11 U.S. citizens have been killed in Israel, and an unknown number are still unaccounted for. President Biden said in a statement on Monday evening, saying that we believe it is likely that American citizens may be among those being held by Hamas. I've directed my team to work with their Israeli counterparts on every aspect of the hostage crisis, man. Come on. including sharing intelligence, which I don't have, man, and deploying experts from across the U.S. government to consult with and advise Israeli counterparts on hostage recovery efforts. Man, come on, man. The House Plant Chief said while expressing anguish over the suffering of Israelis from inexcusable hatred and violence. This is not some distant tragedy, man. The ties between Israel and the U.S. run deep. Boy, I could spend an entire 2 hours just talking about that sentence right there. It's personal for so many American families, man, who are feeling the pain of this attack, as well as scars inflicted through the millennia of anti-Semitism and the persecution of the Jewish people, man. Come on. He noted that police departments across the U.S. have stepped up security around centers for Jewish life, which, by the way, look for something to be staged by some white supremacist around one of those, and the Department of Homeland Security. The Federal Bureau of Investigation and other federal law enforcement partners are closely monitoring for any domestic threats. By the way, hi, my FBI agent. Thanks for watching. Thanks for the view. I see you. In connection with the attacks on Israel. A number of Americans who have been visiting Israel during the attack, including 2 lawmakers, Cory Booker of New Jersey and Dan Goldman of New York, which, by the way, that's an awfully long way away from New York and New Jersey, I'll remind you, were able to leave the country over the weekend. Mr. Biden directed the Americans trying to leave Israel to seek out remaining commercial flights and ground options, and urged all American citizens in Israel, please take sensible precautions, man, in the days ahead, and follow the guidance of local authorities. I don't know that I would get on a plane leaving Israel right now if it was me. Now, if you're already there, and apparently we didn't know this was coming, and didn't have a choice, I get it, I understand. And it's not like you're going to find any friendly territory anywhere around you. Where are you? Syria, Jordan, Egypt. Egypt, I think, is mostly friendly, actually, but I mean, it's not like it's going to be much better in Lebanon. I mean, you've got 2 countries to get through before we've got something that's confirmed a friendly country because it's EU. And like I say, I don't know what the answer is to that. That's a crap situation. Either way. But because it's U.S. citizens, that means it's close to home. All right, let's look at some of the response to this. I've got one from DeSantis and one from Duckworth. And before we move off this topic after we listen to these 2, I also want to take just a second and talk about what this does for the upcoming election. Let's listen to Florida man Ron DeSantis.
Israel is now under attack. I stand with Israel. America stands with Israel. Not only do they have a right to defend themselves, they have a duty to defend themselves against these Iranian-backed Hamas terrorists. Iran has helped fund this war against Israel, and Joe Biden's policies that have gone easy on Iran has helped to fill their coffers. Israel is now paying the price for those policies. We're going to stand with the state of Israel. They need to root out Hamas, and we need to stand up to Iran. Israel is now under attack. I stand with Israel.
I want to say something off this, just based on some of the rhetoric that's running around here. Kind of something on what Uncle Ron here said, and that is Mr. DeSantis has said outright, Israel has the right to defend itself. I do not deny Israel the right to defend itself. I did not deny the Ukraine the right to defend itself. But I want to remember that word, that one word, that a lot of the war pigs are going to forget in the next few weeks. Itself. The articles we've read from already have pointed out Israel is the most powerful military in the region. More powerful than Iraq, Iran, Saudi Arabia, the UAE, and the other powerhouses that are in the region. It is one of the most powerful militaries in the world. They can hold their own. Basically, until you start getting 5 or 6 countries in together, they can hold their own. Now, what's going to happen after the fact? Will Palestine reach out to Jordan, Syria, well, what's left of Syria, Lebanon, Saudi Arabia, or, yes, even Iran, which will, of course, pull Russia into the war because Iran is allied with Russia. It's possible. But if this stays between the PLO, or Hamas as they're called now, and Israel, yes, they're going to hold their own. They can defend themselves. We'll continue to watch this and see where this goes. U.S. Senator from Illinois, Tammy Duckworth, also responding. This is Duckworth responding on the aid going to Ukraine. Now that there's somebody else who wants a crack at our money.
So long as Ukraine needs our support, the United States should not shy away from our role as a global leader in the fight to uphold democracy and the rule of law. A world with a Ukrainian victory is a safer one, and House Republicans need to recognize that. So long as Ukraine needs our support, the United States should not shy away from our role as a global leader in the fight to uphold democracy and the rule of law. A world with a Ukrainian victory is a safer one, and House Republicans need to recognize that. So long as Ukraine needs our support, the United
All right. So that is what we have on Israel. This does change a lot of things going into an election year and where people are going to stand and line up as far as this is. As far as aid goes, as far as military aid goes, as far as military conflicts go. One of the hard parts to predict is what this means for our United States. As I said before, it's very easy to see a position where we might see the U.S. get pulled into this entire conflict based on the fact that it would be good economically for the Biden admin for us to get there. What I mean when I say that is that will boost the number of jobs that people can come back and take, higher paying jobs especially, if there's a sense of patriotism that rings through this country, to go do what the military says and go after the evil brown people. They'll use the same kind of language and rhetoric that they used during the Bushite years. There is a possibility that this does affect us positively, as dismal and as grim as it is. What's going to come with this is going to be the question of who's going to pull up on the side and say, hey, I want to go and support Palestine for this because the Jews! And yes, there are people out there that are like that, or the people who want to line up and say, Israel, it's our greatest ally, the only democracy in the region, and we must spend every part of our GDP to protect them. That is going to be a sentiment that changes and comes up in this upcoming election. And if we do wind up in a hot conflict in this area, there is a very, very low desire constantly to change horses in the middle of the river. As bad as Biden can be, if we are in the middle of a hot conflict and a hot war, there are not going to be a lot of people who want to jump down and go vote for somebody else. No matter how bad the administration is, that is statistical. And it's something that I hate too, by the way, because it gives these warmongering bastards the incentive to go and start and get into a hot war. It's part of the reason I'm actually a little surprised that we don't have boots on the ground in Ukraine. Well, officially, of course, by canon. Everybody knows that we have boots on the ground in Ukraine. Everybody knows that. But our betters in the mainstream media won't tell us about that because that would ruin the narrative that it's just Ukraine going out and defending itself. I'm a little curious to see where the Republican Party goes as far as the primaries, however. I know that MAGA is anti-war. I've known that for a very long time. And they are going to want to stay in anti-war territory. What concerns me right now is that this is going to be an impassable rift to the Republican Party based on the fact of, again, that a lot of the people who are backing the traditional GOP candidates, the non-populist candidates, see going into and defending Israel, going in and regime changing in the Middle East, or going in and having any sort of action in the Levant region as some sort of holy crusade. We got to go over there because we got to defend the lands that Jesus walked around. And I'm not being hyperbolic when I say this. I heard this exact sentiment during the 01 to 08 conflicts and the ones that went on beyond that. And I also know, and I'm sorry to my cousin, I don't mean to pick on you on this one again, but I also know that there is a sentiment amid certain neoconservative members of the Republican Party who think that it's our duty to go out, and I said this at the top too, it's our duty to go out and be in war and have a war because, well, it provides a place for the political undesirables. Hey, we need a war. And we need a war big enough that we have a draft so we can come up and call up all these people who sit on welfare. And if you're on welfare, you're the first one to be picked for the draft. Never mind the fact that people die left and right in these things. But we need to go take care of the political undesirables, one way or another. And yes, that is an actual sentiment that goes on with the traditional neoconservative side. Alright, that's all that I have to say about Israel. We don't have much time left, so we're going to move around a couple things. Let's talk about, since we're talking about the presidential side of things, let's talk just a bit about the Donald and his latest incursion into the legal world here. First, I got a video here from Mr. Mike Singleton telling us that CNN is making a direct comparison of Trump and his rhetoric with Hitler. You know, weren't they just coming out and saying not that long ago that, hey, it's dangerous to call people a Nazi unless they're actually a Nazi? Guess that went out the window. Let's listen.
In Adolf Hitler's manifesto, he wrote, "All the great civilizations of the past became decadent because the originally creative race died out as a result of contamination of the blood." He also links the poison which has invaded the national blood to, quote, an influx of foreign blood. The blood reference is also reminiscent of the chants by white supremacists in Charlottesville in 2017. And tonight, Donald Trump is now under fire for similar language about immigrants. Good evening, I'm Abby Phillip, and here is what the former president and current Republican frontrunner just said about immigrants.
We know they're terrorists. Nobody has ever seen anything like we're witnessing right now. It is a very sad thing for our country. It's poisoning the blood of our country. It's so bad, and people are coming in with disease. People are coming in with every possible thing that you can have.
Now, we don't know what...
That's an interesting jump cut that you put at the end of that, too. Hey, here's the thing. Hey, look, evil Nazi. Evil Nazi. Anybody supports him is an evil Nazi, too. They're not hiding the ball anymore. They're going to take this right into the next election. We'll talk about the nuclear secrets diatribe that came in and died off almost immediately because, well, I mean, a lot of this goes the same direction as the document that was supposedly got waved around and passed around in Bedminster. That wound up, well, we still don't know what's on that document. So I'm going to read here from CBS News to start with. Trump discussed nuclear submarines with Australian billionaire Anthony Pratt, 3 sources say. From Robert Legare and Andres Trier. Evil Donald Trump allegedly discussed sensitive information pertaining to American nuclear submarines with an Australian billionaire at his Mar-a-Lago resort, according to 3 people familiar with the matter. Unnamed, of course. The individual, Anthony Pratt, has been identified as a potential witness in Jack Smith's case against the former president. Sources with knowledge of the situation confirmed to CBS News. The special counsel charged Trump with 32 counts, blah, 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 unlawful retention, blah, 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 blah. There is no indication that the former president shared any sensitive records with the Australian businessman, CBS News has confirmed, which of course again is why the story disappeared in a hurry. Pratt is not accused of any wrongdoing. ABC News first reported Trump's conversation with Pratt, and the New York Times, a former newspaper, first reported Pratt's potential involvement in the upcoming criminal trial. Now, this story was turned into, oh, he told him all the nuclear secrets and he turned around and sold them out to everybody else off of this. Yet again, nobody was able to provide me a transcript of this conversation, a recording, or the document in question. And I said that right on X. I said that straight out. Nobody who's telling you that the Donald gave up nuclear secrets to an Australian businessman has ever seen a nuclear secret that Donald Trump gave up. Because they haven't. They'll sit out there, they'll spitball forever. They'll tell you how horrible he is and how dangerous he is to national sovereignty and nuclear safety and everything else under the sun. National security. He's a security threat. Throw him in prison without a trial. But none of them have ever seen the document. None of them have ever seen the document that got waved around Bedminster. None of them have ever seen the classified documents that were laid out on the floor at the Mar-a-Lago. And with overclassification in this government, I said this when they showed the picture behind the classified headers. You have no idea what's on the paper behind those headers. It's Schrodinger's classified document. There is an equal chance that this is a classified document as it is that it's Melania's chicken Kiev recipe, which I'd like to try at some point, by the way. The special counsel's office declined comment. Representatives from Pratt did not respond to requests for comment. The special counsel's office, well, even if they had the smoking gun, it would be intelligent for them not to comment because then the defense has the time to prepare for it as they go to the trial. But again, I still don't believe that they have the goods, so it may be a moot point at this point. One of the interesting points of what happened as far as the trial, though, or the civil trial goes, there was a demand at the time for Donald Trump to have his business license revoked and his ability to do business in New York taken away, which would, of course, call for the dissolution of his companies in New York. But as biased and as partisan as this judge is, this judge looked up and said, no, we can't do that. From CNN, New York Appeals Court halts the process of breaking up Trump's businesses, but rejects stopping the trial. From Lauren DeValle and Kara Scannell. The New York Appeals Court on Friday rejected Trump's attempt to stop the ongoing $250 million civil fraud trial, but temporarily halted the process of breaking up the former president's businesses. Associate Justice Peter Moulton issued the ruling after a brief hearing on Friday afternoon. It leaves Trump's empire untouched for at least another month and perhaps offers the former president and his family a glimmer of hope. Trump sought to put Judge Engoron's surprise summary judgment order last week that he's liable for fraud and must cancel business certificates for many of his business entities on hold pending further appeal. The dissolution of the entities would cause irreparable harm to the businesses and upwards of 1,000 employees, Christopher KTZed argued in court. We're very pleased the First Department upheld New York law and put a halt to any cancellation of business certificates, receivers, or dissolution. KTZed said following Friday's ruling, the trial court's attempt to reach issues and entities and assets beyond the scope of this case has been suspended. Engoron had ordered Trump to propose potential receivers by October 26, which would begin the process of dissolution. But let's be realistic about this. Now, what Letitia James is doing is trying to make it impossible for Trump to make money, to operate a business, for him to do anything. For the fact that he stood against the establishment, if that's the way that the story actually goes, they want him broke and penniless and unable to come back and fight back, and they want to show you the full might of what the U.S. government will do if you stand against them. It does remind me of it, and I know that I use Bible passages in the beginning of the episode, but it reminds me of another one, this one from the book of Revelation. And none shall buy or sell unless that person has the mark of the beast upon them, unless you fall in line and do what the elites tell you to, which is in no way the way that this country was supposed to operate ever, anywhere in history. You're on person, you don't get to do anything, you don't get to be anything. No. As far as what's going on with this trial, there are a lot of people who are saying that a big part of the reason that they're doing the fraud, even though there's no plaintiff, nobody who made the loans is suing for fraud or anything else, is because they want to come back in, say, and the Beanie Boy, yes, I listened to him on my big hike over the weekend, but the Beanie Boy came on and said, well, what they want to do is they want to go and tell the world that the Trump Tower is worth $25 million and say that he owes $250 million so they can seize it and take it over, and he has nothing anymore, which the Trump Tower is worth well more than $25 million, but they want the value that they're deciding on paper so they can seize it and seize the whole thing instead of seizing a partial out of it. It's just another witch hunt and a warning to you that if you stand up against the establishment, they will do the same thing to you. I find it funny, by the way, that they keep coming out and trying to say that the Mar-a-Lago is worth like $18 million or something stupid like that. And there was just a smaller house without the land than the Mar-a-Lago right next to it that just sold for like $600 million. But they're gonna try. And if you want any further proof off of this, America's mayor, who was beloved by the U.S. people up until, well, he started working with the evil orange man. CNBC reporting Rudy Giuliani owes nearly $550,000 in unpaid taxes, IRS says. You think he's going to get the sweetheart deal that Hunter did? I think not. From Tom Winter, Jonathan Deinst, and Zoe Richards. Former Trump attorney and former New York Mayor Rudolph Giuliani owes more than $500,000 in federal taxes and faces a lien on property he owns in Florida, according to a recent filing. The unpaid balance of $549,435 US dollars and 26 US cents in federal taxes for 21 was revealed in an August notice that said the IRS was placing a lien on Giuliani's property in Palm Beach. Reached for comment on Thursday about the unpaid federal taxes. Goodman, a spokesman for Giuliani, said Mayor Giuliani is suing Joe Biden for defamation, and I get asked about a potential tax issue. You just can't make this stuff up. He later said that Giuliani, through his accountant, has formal agreement with the IRS to pay off the liability, at which they'll find another $500,000 for him to owe. The Daily Mail first reported Giuliani's tax debt, which comes as he faces mounting legal woes and fees. And the amazing part of this is, I don't know about Florida and his law license there, but I know that his primary law license in New York, where he started his career on, has been revoked. So they're coming out here again and trying to find, like, this guy, after being dragged through the mud and everything else, as famous as he is not going to be practicing law with a client anytime soon. The hope is that he has enough in investments that he can sell off, still pay the capital gains tax, and get this taken care of. But again, the question there is, once you question the government or work against the government, how much more they can come back up and find, oops, sorry, you owe this much more, you owe this much more. Last month, Giuliani's former lawyers sued him over allegations that he had not paid legal fees that they said amounted to $1.36 million. Giuliani responded to the lawsuit by saying the dollar amount being sought was excessive. Probably is. I'd like to see an itemized list of that one. Giuliani, the former mayor of New York, also faces a $10 million lawsuit filed by Noelle Dunphy, a woman whose allegations included Giuliani's harassing her and discussing the selling of presidential pardons. After she was hired in 2019, Giuliani has denied the claims. But if they keep him in court, eventually you'll get all the stocks, all the bonds, all the property, and all the assets away from these people. Is this the last one? Probably not. Let's talk about what was, up until Saturday, one of the biggest stories in the news. A story so big, I almost believe that this was done on purpose, because this is Hill Dog walking out and lighting the match and dropping it behind her. And if you don't want me to be president, then I'm going to burn this motherfucker to the ground behind me. It's almost the sentiment that I hear from this. Now, there are other people that are saying this was just a gaffe. She didn't mean this. I don't believe it. I think that she has been pouring the gasoline ever since she got denied the presidency and the support from the DNC to come back out and fight for the election wins again. She lost all the support behind her, and so many people have turned her back on her and told her that they don't want her to try to run again, that she's just been pouring gasoline for the last 4 years, 6 years, however the hell long it's been, and now she's lighting the match behind her. Let's listen to the match being struck.
Those MAGA extremists take their marching orders from Donald Trump, who has no credibility left by any measure. He's only in it for himself. He's now defending himself in civil actions and criminal actions. And when do they break with him? You know, because at some point, you know, maybe there needs to be a formal deprogramming of the cult members, but something needs to happen. And how do you those MAGA extremists take their marching?
You can't tell me for a second she didn't know what the implications of saying that word was going to mean. With the Soviet propaganda that's out there, the Marxist infusion that's gone with the Democrat Party, you can't even begin to tell me for a half a second she didn't know what that meant when she said that word on television. I mean, you can try to tell me that, but I'm not going to believe you. You can try to tell me that she didn't know that this was just a gaffe, that this was just a misstep of words. No. She knew what she was saying. She knew that by saying something like that, she makes the Democratic agenda seem extremist, the ones that stop supporting her. She has done nothing but damage the Democrat Party since she walked away. At what point do you start to ask the question, is this on purpose? Is she doing this just to screw these people who wouldn't come out to vote for her or fight for her or anything else? Let's read from Axios. Hillary Clinton says MAGA cult members need deprogramming. From Ivana Sarik. Yeah, let's get them all in the boxcar and bring them out to the re-education camp. Hillary Clinton likened devoted supporters of former President Trump to cult members and warned that they may need deprogramming in an interview with CNN that aired on Thursday. Why it matters? Common sense and sane Republicans are being intimidated by MAGA members of the caucus, according to Clinton. Where? Who ran against Trump in the 2016 presidential election. Clinton noted that most Republicans joining with Democrats last week to keep the government open and avoid a shutdown as proof of common sense faction of the GOP exists. Clinton predicted that Trump, who is running for president again, will be the Republican nominee for 24. We have to defeat him, she told host Christian Amanpour. Many MAGA extremists take their marching orders from Donald Trump. He has no credibility left in seeking to defend himself in criminal and civil cases. Claiming that Trump is only in it for himself, the former Secretary of State wondered at what point his supporters will break from him. Maybe it needs to be a formal deprogramming of the cult members, but something needs to happen, she added. There is no way she did not know what she said there. You cannot convince me that she knew exactly what that meant and how it's going to be taken. An op-ed, and this is an opinion, the opinion here is the opinion of Xi Van Fleet over at Fox News, not necessarily the opinion of Fox News, contemporary, or your host J. Edgar. But Xi Van Fleet says, I survived Mao. Hillary Clinton's call for deprogramming of Trump supporters is no joke, it's alarming. And again, I have enough reason to believe that this was done on purpose. In a recent CNN interview, former Secretary of State and Democratic presidential candidate Hillary Clinton called for formal deprogramming of what she terms as the MAGA cult. Formal? Did she mean government-sponsored deprogramming? She knows what she meant. This is not the first time the left is calling for deprogramming of the right. In 2021, Alexandria Ocasio-Chavez proposed using taxpayer funds to deprogram white supremacists, a code name for conservatives and MAGA Republicans. Now that one, I would believe, just said something stupid outright. Because she is not bright. The list of others calling for deprogramming includes Katie Couric, former CBS News and NBC Today host who told Bill Maher this in 21. And the question is, how are we going to really almost deprogram these people who have signed up for the cult of Trump? Why such a call? After the thorough demonization of Trump, the left has been totally dismayed that his supporters still stand behind him with unwavering conviction. The only option left is to demonize all conservatives and MAGA Republicans as extremists, as white supremacists, or as threats to our hegemony. In other words, enemies of the state. Still vivid in everyone's minds are the inflammatory words from Joe Biden's speech in Philadelphia, condemning Republicans with words like extremists and threatens the very republic, with a satanic dark bloody red background behind him as he spoke, flanked by two Marines. Oh, but he had blue in there too! A year later, in the 2024 election draws closer, Newsweek reported this week that the FBI has quietly created a new category of extremists that it seeks to track and counter: Trump's army of MAGA followers. The left means serious business. This is how the enemies of the state should be dealt with: deprogram and suppression. This is exactly what happened in China, the country controlled by the Chinese Communist Party, where I spent the first 26 years of my life. So, this person has been through it, and with Cortez, she's a moron. I believe that she just spoke passionately off the cuff. Couric is evil. But Hillary, I honestly think, with inflammatory rhetoric like this, was lighting the match behind her and saying, you guys don't want me to be the first female president and be in the history books forever? Fine, the fuck with you. I'm burning this whole motherfucker down with me. Alright, and the last one, before we do rules of acquisition and things I like and things that I hate, comes from my home state of Wisconsin. I cannot believe the arguments that went on around this moron. And I'll tell you why in just a second. But we'll read from CBS News first. A man with a gun was arrested at the Wisconsin Capitol after asking to see the governor. He returned with an assault rifle. He returned with a modular rifle, not an assault rifle, by the way. No author given. A man illegally brought a handgun into the Capitol, demanding to see Governor Evers, and returned at night with an assault rifle after posting bail, a spokesperson for the state said on Thursday. Having been to the Wisconsin Capitol, I'm going to tell you right off the bat, I have a real hard time believing he got in there with a handgun to begin with. The man, who was shirtless and had a holstered handgun, approached the governor's office on the first... No. Only if they let him. Approached the governor's office on the first floor of the Capitol around 2 p.m. on Wednesday. State Department admin spokesperson Tatiana Warwick said the man was demanding to see the governor, who was not in the building at the time. A Capitol police officer sits at a desk outside the suite of rooms that includes the governor's office, conference room, and offices for the AG. The man was taken into custody for openly carrying a firearm at the Capitol, which is against the law. Warwick said weapons can be brought into the Capitol if they're concealed and the person has a valid permit. The man arrested did not have a concealed carry permit, Warwick said. The man was booked into the Dane County Jail but later posted bail. He returned to the outside of the Capitol shortly before 2100 hours with an assault-style rifle, Warwick said. The building closes to the public at 6. He again demanded to see the governor and was taken into custody. Madison police reported Thursday that the man, who was not named, except we know who he is, was taken into productive custody and taken to the hospital. A spokesperson for the police department did not return an email seeking additional details. And then, of course, we have the, Evers was on a hit list of a gunman suspectedly of fatally shooting a retired judge. And it was, others on the list included Whitmer and Mitch McConnell and Whitmer's kidnapping plot that was orchestrated by the FBI and a load of other bullshit that they want you to believe here. Dan O'Donnell, radio host for iHeart, with the exclusive, the suspect who was arrested after bringing a handgun into the Wisconsin Capitol and demanding to see Governor Evers, and then returning with a rifle after posting bail, is a well-known local Madison area chef, I've eaten at his restaurant before, and a far-left Bernie Sanders donor. And this story completely disappeared before it got to the mainstream news, to the national news. Oops! By the way, that's the reason he's not named in the CBS article. Is because 4chan will go through his social media history and find that he's more than just a one-time $30 donor to the Bernie Sanders campaign. He is an avid and vocal Bernie Sanders supporter. So, wah, wah. Alright, let's do rules of acquisition, and then we'll do a thing I like and a couple things that I hate. On the rules of acquisition, we are closing in on the end of this one. I know I keep saying this every week, but we are getting closer to the end of this. So let's see, where did we leave off? I don't know, but AVG wants to tell me about all the things that they can provide to us. Alright, the 218th was the last one we did. Sometimes what you get for free costs entirely too much. An appropriate name, or appropriate rule for the appropriately named rules of acquisition is the 219th rule of acquisition. From a Next Generation novel, not even a DS9 novel, Balance of Power, possession is 11/10 the law. Now, of course, you've always heard the phrase possession is 9/10 the law. Whoever's in possession of the object is in legal domain of it and perceived to be the owner of whatever the possession is, whatever the acquisition is. But the Ferengi, in their pursuit of profit, take it even further. Once you have it, once you've possessed it, unless you like literally just stole it, it's yours. By their culture, by their laws. Now, I've always taken a little bit of issue with possession as 9/10 the law. I mean, if you've been without something for a good long time, then perhaps maybe it's time to go back and let it go. But realistically, what is yours, what you've worked for, should be yours. And if you find it after years later and you decide you want it back, you should be able to work peacefully with the person who is possessing it. But if the law gets involved and it's been a considerable amount of time, then yes, the law is going to side with the person who's possessed it for the X amount of time. But yes, under Ferengi society, and this is not necessarily one that we would particularly use in our personal society, in our human society, but still an entertaining look to it and a show of how seriously profit is to this particular society. It is 11/10 the law. You have almost no standing if you have been in possession for an object for long enough that it can be considered yours. So, I try to come out and say the ones that we can use in our own society, but this one we can't. Possession is 11/10 the law. Let's do a couple things, a thing that I like and a couple things that I hate. Now, a thing that I like this week, for the last couple weekends, I have gone back out on the trails. It's been nice enough, it's been cool enough that you can get back out and do it, and I've been slacking for a little bit for the summer because, you know, getting busy, having to get a lot of stuff done. But I have been an avid hiker for a long time, for just about as long as we've been doing Contemporary together. I've been going out, and it started off based on the fact that I lived alongside the Ice Age trail, but where I was there, it was mostly flat, but it gives you time to get out into the nature, take a mostly, again, flat 3-mile walk from one end of the lake to the other, and then back. Get your steps in, listen to a couple podcasts while you're out there, or even just some YouTube videos. I loved listening to Bronze Age documentaries when I did that, and I've taken that where I live. Now, I don't tell you guys where I live for obvious reasons. I have been open about the fact that I live near the city of La Crosse, but not in it. But close enough where I'm actually going out and doing activities in La Crosse. And there are a series of trails on the edge of the city of La Crosse that I've been frequenting for a while. And I went through one over this past weekend that, I mean, it's got an elevation to it. The bluff alongside where they go is 1,240 feet. And the one trail, the difficult trail, marked as a black diamond, it says right at the bottom of the trail, steep trail. And I tried it once at the beginning of summer and admitted defeat almost immediately. I didn't get more than 300 feet up that trail. To go up 1,240 feet with the Pythagorean theorem, I mean, you would think that 300 feet up the trail is a long way. It is not, because you're not going very far up, and it's quite a long trail actually. But the elevation just got to me, and I wasn't trained in it, and most of the hiking I'd done was mostly, I mean, I did do Devil's Lake in Wisconsin, which is just about straight up, but as far as going into hiking and climbing into a more steep trail, I hadn't done that yet. There was a more moderate trail that I did, not this past weekend, but the weekend before, and that gave me the push to go in and do this more aggressive trail, which takes you higher up, by the way. And then there's a longer and a little bit easier trail coming back down. And on this trail, you could see the view ahead of you, where I looked over the city from 1,240 feet, and the view was worth every stop, every sweat, every me being out of breath, to sit down over the city and say that, and with photographic proof of, I made it, I did it. It is a great feeling. You set goals for yourself, and I said I was going to climb this bluff before the snow flew, because I admitted defeat on my first trip up. I said, before the end of the summer, I am going to get to the top of this. And I did it. I preach self-improvement. I preach personal goals. I've been doing that since I started. I know a lot of people want the government to come back and take care of them and take care of everything for them. I've never said to do that. There are people who need it, unfortunately. Which is why I've never been completely anarchistic. But I've always said, do better for yourself, make yourself less dependent on the government, and get out there and do that. And with photographic proof in front of you, and unfortunately for those of you listening on the audio platform, you don't get to see this great view. I did it. I made it to the top. I said I was going to do it by the end of the year, and I did. So set yourself a goal, a reasonable goal, and do it. Whatever it takes to do it, do it. And you'll get to look down on everybody else, just like I was looking down on everybody else when this photo was taken. Now let's do a couple things that I hate. Thing that I hate, number one, of course, we're political. We've got to talk a bit about this. This is a story that's actually been ongoing for a little while. Retro Coast over on X did a post about this, and I didn't believe him at first because, I mean, this is just way too on the nose for it, but apparently Newsweek is confirming that it's true. Trump followers targeted by FBI as 2024 election nears. Yes, just as they were saying earlier with the Deprogram article, we have found a new class of domestic terrorist that the government is coming out and knocking on the doors of. I want to remind you, do not go shooting through the door if the FBI is there. They will come in and they will kill you. And then you'll vote Democrat for the rest of time. They will kill you if you try to retaliate. Remember, shut up. Don't answer questions. Don't invite them in. They need to have a warrant if they're going to come in. And anything that does come back out of it, bring up to your lawyer. No matter what they say and how they threaten you, they are bound, unless of course you come back out and start shooting, by laws that a lawyer can argue for you. I hate the government. I do. But as long as we are still not under martial law, As long as we still have the courts to come back out and protect us, none of these morons is worth losing your life over. Keep your mouth shut. Tell them to talk to your lawyer. Get a lawyer, by the way. Tell them to talk to your lawyer, that you're not going to talk to them without a lawyer present, and let the courts handle it. None of these assholes is worth losing your life over. I mean, if they start shooting first, that's a different story, but none of these pricks is worth losing your life over. I want to see you guys in this live stream for a good long time, because I like seeing you named here. Been quiet tonight, but I like seeing you guys here. As long as we have the courts, let the courts handle it. And that may not be the case forever. But as long as we have the courts, let the courts handle it. But apparently they're doing it. And if the FBI knocks on your door, no comment. No comment, talk to my lawyer. Other things that I hate today. From the Daily Mail. Everybody had a hot take on this story, and it was just so unbelievably stupid. Drunk dental receptionist who groped a schoolboy 13 and told him she wanted to ride him till morning, before exposing herself and waking up remembering nothing after a white wine binge, is spared jail. I don't like to be the "can you imagine if the shoes was on the other foot" kind of person. But if this was a man towards a young girl, or even towards another young boy, this guy would be in prison, and not like white collar, calm prison, like pack your bags and tape your butt shut prison. Eleanor Dye reporting a dental receptionist sexually assaulted a 13-year-old boy after she began chatting him up at random following a white wine binge. Jade Berry, 27, was staggering through Rebecca Valley County Park in Ellesmere Port, Cheshire, so this is in the UK, at 9 p.m. local time when she accosted the child as he sat on a woodland bench, talking with a friend about his forthcoming 14th birthday. Barry sat between the two boys and began stroking the 13-year-old's genitals over his clothing before offering him sex and saying, "I would ride you till the morning." As the shocked youngster and his friend got up to leave, she pulled down her trousers and exposed herself before passing out in a drunken stupor. The two boys took videos of Barry before getting up to leave. She was identified after leaving her bank card and phone on the bench. The 13-year-old boy, who has ADHD, said he was so traumatized by the encounter that he tried to take his own life. Hate to say this, but there are probably some other issues above and beyond what's happening with this, but still an unfortunate point of this. At Chester Crown Court, Barry, who lives in the village of Little Sutton, near Ellesmere Port, pleaded guilty to sexual assault and was sentenced to 12 months in jail, suspended for 18 months. Barry was also ordered to wear an electronic sobriety tag for 120 days as part of an alcohol absence monitor program. Will have to complete 35 rehabilitation activity days. And she was told to sign on to the sex offenders register for 10 years. Now, there are a lot of people that are saying, "Oh, well, this boy's really lucky, and this is what every boy dreams about." And I don't like that kind of rhetoric, because clearly he didn't. Clearly this is not what he wanted. Clearly it's not every boy's dream. And I think one of the worst parts to me is, like, this girl's my type, except for the pedophilia, obviously. And if she hadn't tried to engage in that, well, probably been a little bit more local too. Like, this is the kind of person I would probably go out with. But, like, she's out of her mind. Although, having heard some of the stories that I've told about my life, out of your mind in general is not necessarily a bar to entry, but definitely out of your mind and doing stupid crap with kids is. That is a bar to entry. We don't do that here. I am a very, very avid wood chipper advocate. But no, I mean, this is not every little boy's dream. They're coming into their life, they don't know what's right and what's wrong, and this is a person who, no matter how drunk she was, had a vast power differential, and I mean, it affects everybody. It does. And what's worse would have been if it was a boy who looked at and said, "Oh, this is every boy's dream, I want to do this," where the messiness would have come after that point. Because that would have been even worse. But it's a shameful world that we live in sometimes. Last thing that I hate, and this just for me comes on to the double standard of everything. Democrats call on Biden to release Leonard Peltier, activist who fatally shot 2 FBI agents. Leonard Peltier was found guilty in 77 of shooting and wounding shooting 2 wounded FBI agents at point-blank range. From Thomas Catenacci. A coalition of mostly House and Senate Democrats penned a letter to Biden on Friday urging him to grant clemency to Leonard Peltier, a Native American activist convicted in the 70s of fatally shooting 2 FBI agents at point-blank range. The Democrats, led by the House Natural Resources Committee, ranking member Raul Grijalva of Arizona, and joined by Progressive Caucus Chair Pramila Jayapal, AOC, and Bernie Sanders, cast doubt on the circumstances under which Peltier was found guilty in 77 of killing 2 agents 2 years prior. The letter was sent ahead of Indigenous Peoples Day. One House Republican also signed on to the letter. As a member of Congress, we signed this letter with a deep commitment to the crucial role we play in upholding justice for all Americans, and also to hold our government accountable when we see a case of injustice, as demonstrated by the long incarceration of Leonard Peltier. The lawmakers wrote to Biden, "We stand with the tribal nations of the U.S., indigenous voices worldwide, and leading voices on human rights and criminal justice around the globe in support of Mr. Peltier's release." What I hate about this is a massive double standard. Now, if we go over the evidence and see that, yes, there may be a self-defense circumstance around this, then yes, cut the guy loose. But our friends, the Democrats, have gone completely 100% all in on all FBI policing and all people. All the FBI and all the law enforcement from the federal government are wonderful, amazing. And if you try to wound them or kill them, you're trying to kill democracy. But coming out to save an advocate and an activist for their side, an environmental activist, comes out and somehow trumps all that. And of course, if this was an activist for the other side, for a cause that the right cares about, which, I mean, there are very few of them, but an activist for ending abortion or something who had done the same thing, if the circumstances were all the same, they'd be calling for the death penalty for this guy. So, again, if they want to go back and review this, show the evidence to the world as to why they think they need clemency for this guy, that's one thing. But just to come back out and say, hey, cut this guy loose, for no reason other than the fact that he has the color of the skin of the people we're going to be celebrating tomorrow, it shows a true double standard into that caucus, and that's why that falls into things that I hate. And that's the show. Quiet night, you guys. I saw a lot of people watch, especially over on the Rumble side, but not a lot of chatter. You guys, feel free always to come in and say what you think about what you see on the show, but we're going to actually head out of here for the night, so I'm going to go find my outro music. Where is my outro music? There it is. I did a big restart after we got off air last week, and nothing was open, but I did get the new DMS, or I'm sorry, the new encoder up, so things ran a little bit smoother. I like that, and this will be especially helpful on game night, which I think we're going to come back and do some video gaming tomorrow. Kind of hoping to see you guys here for that. We'll do some more Final Fantasy X. I'm trying to find a night that works, by the way, because we didn't really have much on that Monday night, but, you know, I was also streaming during the Monday Night Football game, so there was that. So I want to see what works best for everyone's schedule and going forward, because I do want to play a little bit of Final Fantasy X every week. I'm having a lot of fun with that game, and I want to share it with you guys, and I want to see the end. I want to finish it. I know it's a little bit grindy and everything, but I want to do that. So look forward to that. That'll probably be tomorrow night. I do have a meeting I have to take care of after work immediately tomorrow night, so we'll be a little bit delayed off of that, but I'll do that. We'll get some dinner in, and we'll play some video games, I think, tomorrow night, so come back and join me here. Watch the Discord and X for the time. Otherwise, take care. Have a fantastic night. We'll probably be talking about more war next week on Tuesday, 6 p.m. Central Time. Looking forward to seeing you guys there. For more news, more headlines, and more contemporary. If you are just catching up now, this will be available on Spotify before the end of the night, so go back and check that out, and take care. Have a good night. Stick around if you're on Twitch for the raid. We'll see you then tomorrow for more news, more headlines, or I'm sorry, next week, rather, for more news, more headlines, and more contemporary. And until then, I'm Jay Edgar, and this is Contemporary. Take care.